This meeting is called to order. Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Councilman Imbarson?
Here.
Councilman Chase?
Here.
Councilwoman Francois? Councilman Galtieri?
Here.
Mayor Kramer?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Onijaka? Councilwoman Pruitt?
Here.
Councilman Vasanella?
Here.
Councilman Wright?
We have a resolution to go into executive session, personnel, public safety director interviews. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
So what we're about to do is go into executive session to interview a public safety director. We'll then come out and basically start the regular meeting. It's 6 o'clock now. We will be out promptly at 7, at least. So there'll be no taping from now until I'm back at 7. False alarm.
I feel like I'm missing something.
Okay, we are back from executive session. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion. Excuse me. Madam Clerk, call the roll. Oh,
Councilman M. Barson.
Here.
Councilman Chase.
here.
Councilwoman Francois.
Here.
Councilman Galtieri.
Are we voting yes or is this roll
It's a
call?
roll call
Oh,
again.
yes. All right, here.
Mayor Kramer.
I'm here as well.
Deputy Mayor Onijaka. Councilwoman Pruitt. Councilman Vasanella.
Here.
Councilman Wright.
So what just happened is we were in executive session. We were interviewing candidates for the Public Safety Director. We actually started the meeting at 6, interviewed some candidates, and now we've come out of executive session. That is all the business that occurred. I know we usually start at 7. We are now here, and the next item will be the invocation by Deputy Mayor Charles Onijaka, who is not here. Mr. Chase, perhaps you could do the invocation and a remembrance.
Do the Pledge of Allegiance first.
I thought I was going to do that afterwards.
Okay.
So if we could all stand for the invocation. We're going to do the invocation first, and then we'll do the pledge. 1 second.
As we gather here today as members of the Township Council, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. And we want to particularly remember a former member of the council, a current member of the planning board, and someone who has probably given as much to the service of Franklin Township as anybody in the last 40, 50 years, Bob Mettler, who has just passed away.
So if the Girl Scout, this is Girl Scout week, and so if the Girl Scouts can come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, actually, why don't they stay up, because we'll do the Girl Scout proclamation right now. Hold down the mute button.
My goodness. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It really is an honor and a pleasure to be able to read this proclamation to the Girl Scouts. You young ladies, you look so lovely. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. So the proclamation reads, whereas March 8th through 14th, 2020 marks Girl Scout Week as designated by Girl Scouts of the USA, a movement founded in 1912 by Juliet Gordon Lowe in Savannah, Georgia. And whereas throughout its long and distinguished history, Girl Scouting has remained the preeminent leadership development organization for girls, including STEM, the outdoor development of life skills, and entrepreneurship where girls grow strong, gain self-confidence, develop leadership skills, and learn lifelong lessons of contributing back to their communities. And whereas the success of this extraordinary leadership program in Franklin Township is achieved in large part to the 118 adult volunteers throughout their dedication, time, and talent lead 200 girls in grades K through 12 in the Township of Franklin. And whereas the Girl Scout Gold Award is the highest and most prestigious honor in Girl Scouting, which requires girls in grades 9 through 12 to engage in a rigorous process that calls for leadership at the highest level as they tackle issues that they feel passionately about and where they make a measurable and sustainable difference in their community. They assess a need and design a solution, find resources and support to make it happen, complete the project, and also inspire others to sustain it. Whereas prior to, are you listening? Okay. Whereas prior to achieving the Gold Award, many Franklin Girl Scouts have achieved the Bronze Award, which can be earned by girls in 4th and 5th grades, and the Silver Award, which can be earned by girls in the 6th through 8th grades. And you already know this stuff, right? They don't know, but you know. Whereas the projects that our Franklin Girl Scouts have undertaken to achieve these awards have made a lasting impact on our community. And now, therefore, be it resolved that our Mayor, Philip Kramer, of the Township of Franklin, on behalf of the Township Council, do hereby proclaim March 8th through 14th, 2020 as Girl Scout Week in the Township of Franklin, and call upon all citizens of the Township of Franklin to recognize and support the contributions made by our Girl Scouts in Franklin and adult volunteers to help improve the quality of life in our community. Let's give these young ladies a round of applause. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Now, who's going to take this proclamation? Is somebody on Girl Scout leader? There you go. Thank you. You want to come up and say something? Oh. There's the leadership. Okay, that's great. You got your picture? You have your pictures? You got everything you need? You want a picture with the mayor, with the council?
So they can take that group shot.
Can you take a picture with them? Yeah.
Go on up there, get the shot. Go get the picture. Go get the picture. The picture. Ask you to get the picture now. I just asked you the picture.
Go on up.
Okay, so who here has a gold award? The gold award. 2. So can you come up and tell us a bit about what you did to get your gold award?
So my name is Danielle. I actually just graduated from Franklin High School last year, and I'm currently a freshman at Ithaca College in their Doctorate of Physical Therapy program. I earned my bronze award and my silver award, like we were talking about before. And for my gold award, I did a project called Together We're Soaring, which stands for Stopping Opioid Addiction Right Now, because currently our nation is in one of the worst and deadliest epidemics that we've had to date. And I had a cousin who passed away from a drug overdose, so I was inspired kind of by him. And I led a sort of a movement at Franklin High School. We made posters in the graphics design classes and then did awareness walks in gym classes. And hopefully that's something that we can continue on like every year during Red Ribbon Week. And I created a website that has resources that can be accessed at Together We're Soaring. And yeah. Hi, I'm Frankie. I also just graduated high school and now I'm a freshman at St. John's University in Queens. For my Gold Award, I created a project called, it's about preventing choking in underage children, like under age 3 children. So basically I went around to a lot of different daycares and I educated about what can and can't be a choking hazard and how to prevent anything in your household from becoming one, because you can technically choke on anything. And I also created a website where that houses a lot of information about all different things that can be choking hazards, so parents can access that more easily.
So are the parents of our gold award winners here? Come on up. Come on up. Because you guys deserve an award too. I don't have anything to give you, but people don't get to the gold award on their own, and everyone should know that. They get there with their parent support, and they get there with your support too, because while they're helping teach you, you're helping teach them by letting them or being there for them to teach. And they grow from the community, and they learn from the community, and you have now a responsibility, because to get a gold award, you're an above average person to do that. And you are someone who has gotten there from the community, on the shoulders of the community, so you need to pay it forward or pay it back, because you have great abilities and you need to give those back to the community, and you have already shown that that's what you are made of anyway. You are people who care about the community, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate the work you've done to bring them to this level. Thank you. Okay, now we got to run a meeting. Thank you. What happened to Kimberly? Oh. Hello.
Oh, it's in and out. Can we afford a new mic? Okay, no battery in the budget. So the mayor's been bossing me around since I got here tonight. Come on up here, Safi. Hey, hello. So Safi Collin, as she deserves no introduction. I believe everybody knows her. So I will present to you Safi Collin. She is our special projects manager here in Franklin Township. She's been employed by Franklin how many years now? 22. She didn't want to say that. Now we know she's a little old. She looks a lot younger than she is. She started when she was 8. Okay. Safi has done so much work here in Franklin Township, and it's not just the work that she does for us. There are people across the nation, at least in the state of New Jersey, that have recognized her as the Employee of the Year for 2020. So I want to read this commendation for Sappy Collin. We're so proud of her. So it reads, the purpose of the New Jersey Recreation and Parks Association Award Program is to honor and identify dedicated leaders, employees, and volunteers in the field of parks and recreation, and to recognize the state's outstanding recreation park agencies for excellence in programming, publicity, and facility design. The goal of the award program is to focus state attention on the achievement of park and recreation agencies, to recognize the continuing efforts of staff and volunteers, and to acknowledge support extended by member agencies. Safi M. Collin was recognized by the New Jersey Recreation and Parks Association as Employee of the Year at its annual awards dinner in Atlantic City on February 25th, 2020, for her work in assisting in the oversight of our youth center, the $12 million youth center, and the construction and design of the facility. So on behalf of the Township of Franklin, on behalf of the Township Council, we commend Safi Collin, Special Projects Manager of the Township of Franklin, for her outstanding excellence in programming, publicity, and facility design in connection with the construction of a new youth center here in Franklin Township. Thank you so much, Safi, for everything you do for us. This is not an award of money, but we really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure to thank the Township Council, my boss over here, Bob Bourne, and Wendy White, who actually nominated me for this award. It's one thing to get an award from a state agency. It's another thing to get it from your home, which is much more heartwarming. When I went to, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I've been with Franklin a very long time, and as I said before, it is my home and it's where my heart is. And when we spoke about the things that kind of made us happy over in Atlantic City, one of the things I said was just being involved in an industry where community is what you do. It is transcendent, because you take people who couldn't get along, whether it's for reasons of political ideation and for race, for any differences that they find, and you bring them together, and they become family because they are part of that same community. So that's what we do as township workers. It says in here about the youth center, and just being honored by getting this award from you, and the youth center is your baby that you've raised. So I can't thank you enough. I can't be prouder than to be someone that works with the community that she loves. And I thank you for this opportunity for everyone. Thank you.
She is so stellar. She's so special. Give me a hug.
Thank you, Wendy White, for nominating me. You're really great. Sorry.
I have two mics. Safi's great. I have little to add to that. It's just, she's always there when you need her. She's there when you don't even expect her to be there, doing things for you, doing things for the town, making things work. It's just well-deserved. Well-deserved. You're welcome. No, the virus. I got to talk about the virus later. I have to set an example. I'm not even wearing a tie because of the virus. Okay. But thank you. Here we go.
Nice.
There we go. All right. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Vasanella. I think that's the newer one.
This one. Can I put it on here? We have a proclamation here tonight, and it's honoring the American Red Cross. So, whereas more than 139 years ago, the American Red Cross was established as a humanitarian organization, guided by 7 fundamental principles, including humanity, impartiality, and independence, to provide services to those in need regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or citizenship status. And today, it is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world. It delivers its mission every day to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And whereas every year the American Red Cross responds to an average of more than 62,000 disasters across the country, from small home fires to devastating massive disasters, and thousands of American Red Cross volunteers provide around-the-clock shelter for disaster victims, serve millions of meals and snacks with partners, and distribute millions of relief items. And whereas in New Jersey, the Red Cross has assisted with 821 local disasters in the past year alone and helped save lives through our Home Fire campaign, which has partnered in the installation of more than 41,000 smoke alarms, as well as handles an average of 7,233 emergency military calls every year, and collects an average of 94,708 units of blood from our generous blood donors. And whereas March is Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help the members of the community. And whereas the American Red Cross shelters feeds and provides emotional support to victims of disasters, supplies about 40% of the nation's blood, teaches skills that save lives, provides international humanitarian aid, and supports military members and their families. And whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on volunteers and the generosity of the public to perform its mission. And therefore, I, James Vasanella, on behalf of Phil Kramer, the mayor of Franklin Township of Franklin, Somerset County, New Jersey, on behalf of the Township Council, do hereby proclaim March 2020 as Red Cross Month and encourage all Americans to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. So I don't know if there's anybody here to receive this tonight. This is one of these ones that we acknowledge because we like to acknowledge what we believe are groups and organizations that are beneficial to not just America, but especially to Franklin. So having been involved in emergency services over the years here on the council, and even before that, just knowing of how much Red Cross does and are there when you need them. And in Franklin, fortunately, we haven't had too many large catastrophes, but if you ever read our local media or any about a local fire where families are displaced, they're there. The Red Cross is there. They fill a void that otherwise would not be filled. So please think about them, and if you want to volunteer, reach out to them. You can volunteer, and hopefully you'll support them in any other way, and hopefully we will not need them here in Franklin often, but if we do, they're there to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pruitt, Women's History Month.
So it is my honor to read the proclamation celebrating Women's History Month, which started the month of March, and to stand here with my other councilwoman at large as I read this. So, whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. Whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation, whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation, whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military, whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of the American woman in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now, therefore, we, Councilwomen Kimberly Francois and Crystal Pruitt, and Mayor Philip Kramer, on behalf of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2020 as Women's History Month in Franklin Township, and honors the theme, Valiant Women of the Vote, in recognition of the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which guarantees and protects women's constitutional right to vote and marks the largest expansion of democracy in the history of our country. Nice lady.
Before we open to public session, I can't stand not saying anything anymore. This is not Casual Tuesday. I don't think the public has ever seen me not in a tie, but it has been long established that ties in medicine, ties actually carry germs. And as a neurologist, I don't deal with infectious disease much, so I wear ties. But given what's going on, I'm setting the example, and I'm not wearing a tie, and it's killing me. But, okay, do we have a motion to open to the public? Yes,
Mr. Mayor, before we do that, if you're wondering over here, some of the brownies or Girl Scouts are still here. So I wonder why they wanted to punish themselves by listening to us. And I found out that they're looking for a merit badge. Is that correct? They're working on a brownie badge. So this is they need to sit here for government, or? So my fellow council members, we need to give them a round of applause for hanging out with us.
So move for your motion to open to the public session then.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of opening public discussion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. We are now open for public discussion. Anyone wishing to speak may come to the mic, state their name and address. They have 5 minutes, no yielding of time, may speak once.
Hi, good evening. Bernadette Marr, 4 Norris Road here in Somerset, New Jersey. I'd just like to take a minute to thank the council for all their hard work. You have been very supportive to the Franklin Task Force and Central Jersey Environmental Defenders regarding our struggle against the Northeast Supply Enhancement Project, which includes a compressor station that is proposed to be built off of Route 27 down near Trap Rock Quarry, and also a pipeline that will go under the Raritan Bay. Unfortunately, Williams keeps coming back and back. They have reapplied recently, which I'm sure everyone is aware of at this time. And so that means that we need to treat the application as if it's a new application. So all comments and letters we need to do again. So I've left some letters in front of you, if you would be so kind as to sign them. If you'll look at our website, www.scrapnessie.org, There's information on the website, and there will soon be an electronic petition that will be available there. I'd also like to thank the council for passing resolutions, and in fact, there's one this evening, Resolution 2122, that is supporting the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's denial of all permits for the Northeast Supply Enhancement Project. Again, we need the public and the council and all township members to be involved in this struggle, as it's important to our safety and health. And even though you have your hands full with budgeting and the coronavirus epidemic, we do appreciate your time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. Richard Seaman, 34 Rushigal. Just want to thank all the members of Town Council for their efforts on behalf of the township at all times. I appreciate it. I was very saddened to hear of the passing of Mr. Metler earlier this week. I had a number of wonderful opportunities to listen to him talk about the history of Franklin Township. And you know, it's always sad when folks that have that history and have that knowledge and as Dr. Chase said, worked very hard to build this township, leave us. So we remember him. The reason I'm here tonight is to talk about Empty Bowls. And Empty Bowls, this year will be the second year for the Empty Bowls fundraiser for the Franklin Food Bank. And it's on March 22nd at the Doubletree Hotel. And the concept is very simple. It's an effort to raise money and awareness with regard to hunger throughout our community and hunger throughout our world. If you come and buy a ticket, you receive a bowl, a handmade bowl like these, one Mayor Kramer has. These are all made by local artists here in New Jersey, and they are all donated. No money is spent to buy these bowls. Last year they gave out hundreds of them. And you receive a bowl and you get to take this home. And it's to remind you of all the empty bowls, unfortunately, in our community and in our world. But before you leave, a number of restaurants throughout our community and our county will be donating food. So there's a wonderful lunch that will be available. I can't tell you what's going to be there because there's 10 or 11 restaurants, and each one's going to bring something that they specialize in. And last year was really a wonderful event. I think far more people turned out than we ever imagined, and we certainly hope this year we get a few more. So I thank you and for your time tonight. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to everyone coming March 22nd to the Doubletree. Thank you.
And how do we get tickets?
Tickets are available at the Franklin Food Bank website. There's a link there to Empty Bowls, and you can get them in advance. You can get them at the door as well. They're $5 more at the door, but you can certainly get them in advance over the next couple of weeks.
What time is that event?
It's 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Okay. Great. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Gallagher bag. Good evening. Arnold Schmidt, 134 Hickory Road, Somerset. On reviewing Mr. Renone's plastics ban draft ordinance, my primary concern is wording used in the enforcement section. I enforce DEP regulations using their protocols for 30 years while also working on cases with local enforcement officials. I would suggest to use the word persuasion for enforcement purposes is not a consistent or effective way to attain compliance. When a violation of an ordinance is determined, In my experience, a written notice of violation should be issued with a compliance date. If compliance isn't achieved within the NOV's specified time, a violation with a monetary penalty should then be issued. I gave Councilman Chase a hard copy of an NOV document, the notice of violation document that we used, and I emailed to him a few other comments about the ordinance. I would guess the township has their own similar enforcement documents. So since I don't have any legal remedy to get you to consider making the enforcement section less ambiguous, I'm here to try to persuade you to remove the word persuasion from the ordinance and make the enforcement process more formal.
I gather. So we can, so it's okay, you can make fun of me all night.
I'm not making
really,
fun of you.
I don't really mind.
I just
But
don't want my time, I don't want my time
wait,
interrupted. I
stop
need
the
all
clock.
5 minutes of my
Stop the-
time.
We can stop the clock. Just so you know, that's not the most current draft of the ordinance, because as a result of the comments that I got from Councilman Chase, I think I made most of the changes you requested, but you can continue to go through it if you want.
I appreciate that, thank
And
you.
I appreciate you making fun of the township attorney.
It's quite all right. I appreciate it too.
It was just levity, it wasn't meant to make fun of you. And I'm glad that the levity went over. Anyway, issuing NOVs will make tracking infractions easier, and it will assure all violations are treated equally. As far as what else I would like to see in the ordinance, I would like to also see a more proactive approach to enforcement, including facility inspections by township personnel. I also would like to suggest a ban in Franklin on the sale of single-use plastic plates and drinking cups, products that are frequently used at picnics and birthday parties as well as other events. There are already non-plastic plates and cups on the shelves right next to these plastic products. Getting rid of these single-use plastic products would remove tons of more plastic from our solid waste stream. I would like you to consider setting a principled precedent. Let Franklin be a leader by banning these easily replaced single-use plastic products. Finally, this is a copy of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate, January edition. As you can see, there is a wonderful picture of Councilman Chase on the cover holding up a shopping bag that he uses instead of plastic bags. It has his name on it. Of course, we don't all get to have a bank named after us, but it's nice that he has it. So here we are on the precipice of the council preparing an ordinance to ban some unneeded plastic products and bags. And what do we see in the foreground of this picture? Plastic cups that I know we've talked about before, and I've heard the explanation for it. My point is, it's not great optics having single-use plastic cups on the dais right in front of you that I rarely ever see you guys even use, the same type of plastic cups that I've asked that you ban the sale of. So thank you for your time. Now, these are bought off the shelves of stores in our town. Plastic plates, Heinz, plastic. Back. This, A Nature's Promise, it's not meant to be an advertisement, a dinner made with bamboo, made from, if that's for me, I'm not available right now, made from bamboo, made with 100% renewable resources, 100% compostable, not plastic, right on the same shelf as these plastic products. Another product, eco-friendly, made from recycled material and compost, not plastic.
Arnie, are those the recycled paper, the ones you're holding there?
I'm reading what is on here, made from recycled material and compostable. Not here for that one either.
Time's up.
What's it wrapped with?
Plastic. Good point. Very good point.
Mr. Schmidt, time is up.
So are these.
Mr. Schmidt, time is up.
Paper cups,
Mr. Schmidt,
plastic cups.
time is up.
I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, you are.
I made my point.
So, Mr. Attorney, now that you've recovered from your humiliation, are we, I'm not arguing for or against, can we ban a legal item?
I think that we're talking about something that's, I mean, obviously, if you walk up and down the aisle of a food store, you're going to find a lot more than that that's in plastic, right? So I don't know what the answer to that question is. I think that at some point in time, you get to a bridge too far. I think what we're talking about here is banning handout of single-use bags and other things that are like takeout restaurants. I don't know any of the ordinances currently in the state, and I guess maybe that's the point, to try to do something that nobody else is doing that would ban and require us to go into plastic, red Solo cups off the shelf. I guess that's what we're talking about doing. So I think that might be a question that you might want to gather. I haven't seen an ordinance that's, and by the way, neither of the bills that were introduced in the legislature, and certainly not either of the last time and this time in the Senate, go that far.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Mayor,
Okay.
seeing no one come forward, a motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of closing public portion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Bernadette? Okay. While she collects, we can start council comments. Councilman Wright, you've already had yours. Councilman Chet.
Want me to say that? Okay.
Councilman Wright.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be short.
I'm always short.
I love it here. One quick thing. Everyone comes up and asks me about taxes. Why are my taxes so high? When can you lower my taxes? And I always ask them, well, what part of the tax bill are you looking for? Is it the municipal tax? Is it the school tax, the open space tax? And once you say that, everyone looks at you and goes like, and I said, well, didn't you see the green card that comes in your house that tells you what you're paying for? And they all look at me and says, yeah, we look at the bottom line. And I thought about that, and this one goes down to our township manager. Is it possible that on our beautiful website that we could put a pie chart up that says, this is what you pay for? Is it there? No?
There's a lot of information on our website already, and I mean, are you asking for a breakdown? So the breakdown will be determined after everybody establishes their budgets for the year, so it won't be now.
Right.
But,
Okay.
But the reality is that about 16% of your tax bill is municipal, about 16% is county, and about, 5% is open space, about 3%, I'm sorry, what, you were going to correct me? Go ahead, correct me.
So it's actually now about 18 or 19% is town.
Town, okay.
And that includes library.
Right.
And open space. 65-ish% is
Board of Ed.
Is Board of Ed. Couple percent are the fire, and then the rest is county, which is you're not far off. 16%.
16%
yeah.
about that.
Yep.
And it's about 16% municipal and about 3% library. That gets you to what your number was, 18, 19%. So I hadn't gotten there yet.
So after all of that, and the mayor jumping in the middle, if we could, as we get everybody's number together, and on that page where we have the breakdown, a little pie chart that says, this is what it is, I think people will start to understand better than the written word, is that they'll understand how that breakdown is because of the pie.
There's a phrase, it's from your mouth to God's ear. I think that that's fitting right now. This has been preached for a long time, but I will certainly put a pie chart on the website that says what we've been saying for as long as I've been doing this, and I'm sure
loving
others a lot longer.
Next thing I had, oh, Somerset County Black Democratic Caucus had a function this past weekend where they highlighted and they gave awards out, and one award that went to the first black Somerset County Director, Ms. Chanel Robinson, which was the highlight, I believe, because again, women are taking over, women are moving up, and Chanel being from Franklin Township, more importantly, Chanel being from the 4th Ward, I would like to congratulate her for her achievement. And that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Chase.
Okay. The Land Use Committee did not meet at the end of last month. The one committee I might report on is the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which heard about new, quote, soil protection standards, unquote, proposed by the State Agricultural Development Committee. And there are a number of proposed limitations of such things as agricultural development of things like parking lots that are needed if you're going to do the many things that many modern farms do to make a buck, have hay mazes or pumpkin festivals or pick your own strawberries or whatever. And the committee expressed concern that even though the current proposals don't probably won't cause problems for existing use on preserved farms, they may discourage farmers from preserving their farms in the future, because what they can do, again, to make a buck from their farms will be more and more limited. And I said I would report this to the council. I've given out to the council copies of the draft ordinance that I received from Mr. Raynone, and I guess it's not the latest. I don't know when he produced the latest version, but that was, I guess, in response to comments that I made on his ordinance, and a copy of the draft that the Environmental Commission had produced at its last meeting. They felt it wasn't quite finished and tried to have an emergency meeting last night, but unfortunately the required 48-hour notice of an
Mr. Chase.
extra meeting did not go out. Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, so we have a council discussion on that.
I was just going to say that I've distributed these for the purpose of the council discussion, and I wasn't going to say anything more about them than that. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Galtieri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real briefly, I had fire chiefs last week, association. So I will not go into everything because I think you have this as a topic for our current environment. But just know that the fire departments are working to be prepared for other emergencies beyond just fire. So in dealing with the current virus outbreak. The only other thing that I want to mention is absolutely, please go out, buy a ticket and go to Empty Bowls. Last year was phenomenal. We have 2 bowls in our house that sit as decorations, and it's a good way to help the residents of the community. So definitely, please come out, support the food bank. It really helps the residents, and you get a pretty bowl and get to try some food from different restaurants around town. All bowl fitting meals, if I'm not mistaken, so, or food. So other than that, I do have fire prevention this week, so I'll report on that next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just stay healthy, everybody, please. I'm talking about that later, so just try to stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Councilman Unbar's son. I'm getting it from all sides tonight.
Okay, just to piggyback on Councilman Galtieri's comment. Shaking hands is a taboo now, so I'm reminded of how we greet people in India by doing this. It's a nice way of avoiding the social contact, so practice that, I suppose. Anyway, last week I attended the HRC, the Human Resources Commission meeting. We had a special guest from the county. Sheriff Russo came in and gave us a nice talk about what he has been doing, how he is getting the offices involved in the community. He's got volunteer offices that are taking responsibility to interact with the community they live in or they choose. So that's a very good program that he has initiated at the county level. And I think we got a report from the police officers that the car burglaries have pretty much stopped for the last 1 month or so. And the final suspect in the latest shooting was apprehended. So that's all seems to be, I guess, successfully closed. We had a new commissioner that was inaugurated, Venki Saragopan, up and running. And lastly, Anne-Marie updated us on the township's efforts towards a successful census count. We are going to be coming up with some marketing materials, awareness campaign very soon. So counting everyone in the township is important. We need to be counted, and we are hopeful that our count would be higher than last census, so that the county, the township allocation from the federal government would be higher. So I encourage everybody to look for the census mailer that would come to you the first week of April. Complete that on your computer and send it in. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pruitt.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess piggybacking off of my colleague, thank you to the police department for all the hard work that they did in regards to the car burglaries and investigations. The Detective Bureau and Patrol and everyone else, thank you so much for your hard work on that. It is appreciated and recognized. So last week or the week before, there was a blood drive. So I think it was a fairly successful event. I donated blood and then promptly popped up and went to a meeting. So I think, always keep your eye open for opportunities to donate blood. It is really important. There are constant shortages, and it's always a nice way to give back if you physically can. I was able to participate in the Seniors Got Talent show. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. We have very, very talented seniors in our community. And shout out to the winners and also Marianne, who put the whole thing together. She did a wonderful job. We did have a meeting of the Advisory Board of Health. Obviously, we talked about current events, the virus. I will defer to the township manager to report out on that. I, too, am very excited about empty bowls. I never knew I was really into ceramic bowls until I went to the event last year, and now I have a lot. And on a lighter note, shameless self-promotion, I am in this month's New Jersey League of Municipalities magazine as one of the women of the future. So if you do not want your copy, please give it to me so I can send it to my family. Or if you want an autograph and you want to get on the ground early, happy to do that. That is all I have for the good of the cause.
Thank you. Councilman Vasanella.
Thank you, Mayor. In the packet. Anyway, the main meeting attended since our last council meeting was Office of Emergency Management, which involves the Emergency Preparedness Committee and Emergency Management Council, which I'm part of, met to discuss the coronavirus. The manager and perhaps the mayor will be giving you more information. Obviously, it's changing literally by the minute. Bottom line is, it was great to have that meeting. It was the largest meeting in the dozens I've attended over the years of the OEM. We had representatives from the county, from the town, the school superintendent, and key people from the school district. It was obviously needed. There was so much to coordinate, communicate, and communication is really the key for this whole situation. The manager, I'm sure, is going to go into depth with this. I just want to say that prior to that meeting, I had a lot of concerns and questions of where this stood and how well we were prepared to deal with whatever may be in the pipeline. And I came out of that meeting realizing, thankfully, that we are prepared for what you really cannot prepare for. And by that I mean that, precedents were set, things were discussed to follow up on. A lot was accomplished. But again, this is just changing by the minute, as most of you probably know. And a good example of that, and just to wrap this up, I know I got a call from a convalescent center in town today because I visit somebody there on a regular basis. And that's the kind of actions that we're hoping to come out of that meeting. Apparently they, and I'm assuming other nursing home and assisted living places in town also are reaching out to the people they have on their list that come to visit and whatnot, and reminded us of limit the visits, of please try to keep high-risk people from visiting. There's going to be a form to fill out when you get there, I guess, acknowledging protocols and concerns. So that's the type of thing. That's the new normal, hopefully not for a long time, but at least for now. So things are happening rapidly, and whether it's the hospital or visiting somebody in one of these facilities, remember everything's different now, and you may want to reconsider or contact the facility first to see what protocols are put into place. So on that note, I'll let the manager and mayor talk more about it, but we'll see what happens. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Kimberly Francois.
First, I'd like to say that I'm very saddened about Bob Mettler. He sat on the redevelopment agency with the councilman Wright and I for many, many years. He was truly devoted to our community, a great example of what it's like to work with people working together towards a common goal, towards the community. And he was truly a gentleman, really cared a lot about Franklin, so he will be greatly missed. Liked him a lot. Now, on a more positive note, congratulations, Ms. At-Large, Crystal Pruitt, the true trailblazer of Franklin Township, the up and rising star, our up and coming star. Very nice, very nice. I like the comments you make. Okay, now I'm going to do a little self-promotion myself. I was a keynote speaker twice for Black History Month. Once I was at the National Council of Negro Women keynote speaker, and I spoke on the Black suffrage movement and the importance of voting. I also sponsored, the Franklin Youth Initiative also sponsored a event called See America in Color essay contest. And our superintendent was there with his wife. And we had students come down from Bayonne, from Mount Holly, from Hoboken, and our Franklin Township schools students. It was a really, really nice event over at the Senior Community Center. Then the Franklin Youth Initiative also hosted the Black History Month celebration for Stop the Violence. It was our 7th annual Stop the Violence event. There were over 200 young people there. It was a really, really nice event. Thank you, Mr. Von Locker, for having the community police there. I think they really had a good time. They stayed to the very end, and they really enjoyed the performances.
They did have a good time. It was the message got back to me that on Monday that they had a very good time.
Yeah, they really enjoyed being there with the kids. The performances were great. And I must give an update about the Youth Center. I've been getting clamored about the Youth Center and what's going on with the Youth Center. So I want to say the project is back on track. And I'm going to read this. The excavated and unusable soil has been removed from the site. The fill soil has been approved and will begin to be trucked into the site in the next few days. The concrete pouring for the footings and the walls has continued. And all of the issues and questions regarding the steel have been resolved with the steel manufacturer. So we're back on track. And Guy is not here tonight, but I'll make sure I let him know. And some of the other people in the community that have been contacting me, asking me about what kind of activity's been going on over there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Charles Onijaka.
Yes, Mayor, I want to use this I want to use this opportunity to congratulate Safi Kellan for her commendation and for what she has been doing for Franklin. And she has used her position to elevate a lot of advantaged kids. And at the same time, at the same token, we have compiled names of individuals that will work in the Continental Committee, which will be very, very helpful to Franklin and their project. So by next meeting, I will submit the names to the council to go through them, and if there are changes or ratification, we will do them. That is what I have for the night, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my turn. Once again, I'm wearing a tie as much as, I'm not wearing a tie as much as it pains me. Because ties spread germs, and I'm trying to set as good an example as I can. There is the empty bowls. I do want to reiterate about that. Gathering. Hopefully, we will be able to have a gathering. And I guess I get a free bowl out of mentioning it. They'll donate to the town. But it is for a good cause, the Franklin Food Bank. Mr. Mettler is a friend of mine. He is part of the foundation of this town. He was someone we always could count on, regardless of party, to always do the right thing for Franklin. He had the long picture of Franklin, and as was pointed out to me actually by our manager, his family dates back centuries, and other than the sedans, those were the only two that we could come up with that are really the essence of Franklin. I mean, there are some families who have been around 100 years, but that pales in comparison to the time the Mettlers have been here. So quite a loss of losing Mr. Mettler. On to the virus. I spent Friday and actually parts of today, had to run out between patients, trying to contact, it's easy to contact our public schools. It's one quick cell phone call to Mr. Ravalli, and I've contacted 10 schools. But we actually have quite a number of other schools in town, private schools, parochial schools, charter schools, and I wanted to make sure that some of them answer to the county superintendent and some don't answer to anyone, and I wanted to make sure that they had a plan for the virus and that they knew that they had my cell phone number and they could reach me if there was an issue. One of them reached out to me today for an issue. They do have things under control. Special shout out to Dr. Ravalli. He is all over this with preparation in the schools, and they continue to prepare. So our kids who are at the lowest risk, because risk increases with age, are really well taken care of, and I'm confident of that. As far as the virus itself, we have to keep this in perspective, and that doesn't mean I'm not washing my hands several times a day before and after each patient. Just if I'm walking around the hospital and touching things, I wash my hands. I'm conscious not to touch my face. In fact, right now, there's an itch above my eye, and I'm not scratching it. But let's keep this in perspective. We're worldwide, what is it, 40, how many have died?
A little over 4,000.
Little over 4,000. 20,000 to 40,000 Americans die of influenza every year. 38,000, roughly 40,000 Americans die every year of automobile accidents. We don't panic about those, and we shouldn't be panicking about this. We will get through this. I'm not saying there won't be pain, and I'm certainly not saying don't take it seriously. I'm washing my hands. I'm using Purell. I'm taking precautions. But, I mean, keep it in perspective, and we will get through this. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. Stop touching your face. Sorry to embarrass you, but that's how you get it, by touching something, then touching your face. So just be mindful, and we will be okay. So, okay, we are now on to a new section a new category that will come and go quickly with this meeting. Township Attorney Report.
Is this where I get to respond to?
Yes.
Just want to make sure. Thank you for including that as part of your agenda. The only reason that we put this on the agenda is tonight is because we've been increasingly dealing with some of the issues with the coronavirus that the mayor has spoken about. And the governor's issued an executive order as of yesterday. And I have to say that we in Franklin and most of the municipalities are trying to now comprehend what it is exactly the authority that the governor has given to us or has not given to us. And in some respects, we're working through, public health emergency enactments that are based upon statutes that are literally a century old, and we're trying to understand exactly what powers the governor has now given us. There are a couple of things that we have been talking about because, once again, while everything that the mayor said is true, we're trying to deal with issues of continuity of government and how it is that might operate in the event that, for instance, we have to close town hall for a week or have to cancel a council meeting 2 weeks from now, and how we're going to deal with that. I've spoken to some of the council people. The good news is, as opposed to when New Jersey passed these laws and was dealing with the Spanish flu, is that we actually have the ability now to conduct meetings by telephone, to conduct Facebook Live meetings if we have to. None of the laws that govern our procedural parts of how we do our business really address how it is that we're supposed to deal in a new normal where, for instance, we can't have a public meeting, but we have to have an open public session under the Open Meetings Act. We have to adopt ordinances, but we don't have the ability to have a public hearing because we don't have public meetings, because we're telephone. So we're going to work through all of those issues. We're going to, to the extent that we can, we'll talk to DCA and get guidance. My opinion is that as a fallback, there's always the concept of what we call the doctrine of necessity, which is to the extent that we have to act to pay our bills, keep people employed, deal with our employees, deal with our police department. We'll continue to do those things. To the extent that we get back to normal business and we have regular council meetings, we'll then ratify those actions. I'm fairly certain, based upon DCA has reacted to past incidents, the Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irene, the 9/11, that they'll understand that we'll be able to deal with those things. The governor's executive order has given us leeway with regards to procurement to the extent that we need to buy things that are necessary for us to deal with whatever exigencies occur. So we'll continue to do that. And, we also understand that we have to deal with, we're going to deal with the public and our vendors in ways that, are trying to keep us. I think we all recognize that the government here deals with a lot of very small businesses who have to operate also. So, we can't, while it might be great to not pay the bills for 2 months, it'll have a catastrophic effect on the people who. So we're dealing with all of those issues. We'll keep, to the extent that we can, we'll keep council apprised. I've sat in 5 or 6 meetings in 5 or 6 municipalities, and I told this to Bob today. Last time around Hurricane Sandy, or every time that there's a snowstorm, I sit in OEM meetings, and you're there with the public works people. This time I sat in all of these OEM meetings with the IT people. It's just a different, we're not talking about clearing the roads so people can get to work. We're talking about figuring out ways that people could stay where they are if they have to stay where they are and have to work. So it's a different kind of thing. And my guess is that we're going to learn a lot from this. And 3 or 4 months from now, we're going to be talking to people in Trenton about how it is that we can deal with these things and give authority to councils to forward. And I'm going to leave that up to Crystal Pruitt to get that done in Trenton.
Manager's report. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's been a number of people now who have discussed COVID-19 and the response and the things that we are doing to be prepared. So I'm not going to belabor that again too much. I am going to touch on some things that I think are important that the public understands. One is that if you have questions about this, I direct you to our website in the Spotlight and in the current news. There's now been a page created that has links to the most current information being put out by the CDC, by the New Jersey Department of Health, as well as the Somerset County Department of Health. And I think that we're limiting it to those sources because those are the sources that we are relying on as it dictates our actions as we move forward. I echo what the mayor said, and he and I have had many discussions. As a medical doctor, I rely on him to give me information as it relates to that. But as someone who's dealt with the public for 35 years in various forms, I think I have an understanding too. I don't want people to panic. We have been through this before, and in all likelihood, we will be through it again. And we will come out of this, and we will do all of those things necessary from municipal government that we have to do to help you live your lives safely, and that's what we're going to do. And so some of the things that I just want to bring to your attention is that I have met not only with the emergency management staff. John House is our emergency management coordinator. We also have representatives on emergency management from the police department that I've met with daily. I've also met with all of our department heads, and we'll have a standing Monday morning meeting with department heads to go over what things we'll do moving forward. If there's anything that we need to change or alter in the interim, we'll do that. We're going to provide for things like hand sanitizers have been ordered, not only for our offices, but for the public areas of the building, tissues. We've distributed disinfectant wipes to all of the departments so that they can, continually wipe down doorknobs and phones and desks and computer keyboards, things that we touch. Please don't take offense. You're going to see people who engage the public on a regular basis, taking cash and checks and permit applications, wearing latex, or actually non-latex gloves, but gloves, so that there's not that transmission between people submitting and our staff, so that it's for the safety of both people in those transactions. We need to be cognizant of the fact that this virus has a lot of unknowns, but we also have to understand that we will continue to provide governmental services for as long as we can, and hopefully that's forever. We're going to do everything in our power to protect the interests of our employees and our citizens who come visit our buildings. I've encouraged things like teleconferences as opposed to in-person meetings, and so our staff is going to do things like, if you have an issue that you want to raise with the police or with the clerk's office or with the assessor's office, I would encourage you to do that over the telephone if at all possible, rather than in-person visits, just simply because we're going to look to try to limit those person-to-person contacts as much as we can, as it's, especially if you are exhibiting signs of illness, with flu-like symptoms. I'd ask that you try to deal with us over the phone rather than in person. I know people who very much like to come pay their taxes in person, Mr. Mayor. We do receive tax payments via the mail. You don't have to come here to pay your taxes. You can put them in the mail. You can pay them online. You can drop them in the collector box out in front of the police station. You can do all of those things. So that's where we're at right now. There's nothing changing as we speak as far as the services that we provide. It is pretty much status quo right now, but as I think it was Councilman Vassanella said, this is a very fluid circumstance. And because of that, we'll adapt as we move forward. And I think that pretty much covers my report on coronavirus. Again, go to our website if you want information. All of the information that is as current as it can be from the CDC, from the State Department of Health, and from our County Department of Health, who also happens to be our Township Health Officer, are on our website.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council discussion items, proposed ban on plastic. As Mr. Chase said, I did this because I was expecting the Environmental Commission to have an emergency meeting, and I wanted to get that last input before we finally sent it off to the attorney to do any last-minute changes, and then we could introduce. So what I was thinking would be that Councilman Chase would give us the sense of the Environmental Commission.
Well, I think that the substance of the Environmental Commission's draft ordinance is really much the same as the draft that Mr. Raynone has given us. Mr. Schmidt has addressed a couple of the differences, the ones that he feels strongly about. I mean, the most substantive difference is that Mr. Raynone's ordinance bans give away plastic utensils with food from a fast food source, or doggy bags from a restaurant where you don't finish all that you're served and take some home, which to me is about as far as we could go in that direction. Both of us, I think there's a question as to the exact wording about enforcement, and the manager had suggested basically leaving it to whoever the manager appoints to carry out enforcement. And in response to Mr. Schmidt, I'd say that a lot of our township enforcement results from citizen complaints, that the zoning officer doesn't go out looking for violations of the zoning ordinance, for instance. One point which is not different between the two draft ordinances, but I think is really the most substantive issue at present, is the question of whether to accept paper bags as an alternative to, instead of the single-use plastic bags. Both the draft ordinances accept these for the payment of a fee of 10 cents or more for the foreseeable future. Some other ordinances have suggested accepting paper bags for 6 months or a year as a transitional period. Senator Smith's bills have simply cut off using paper bags at the same time as plastic bags. But I understand that this is the issue that the Assembly is wrestling with, that there are a number of different opinions in the Assembly on this. Possibly Councilwoman Pruitt knows something about this. And the supermarkets would like to get out of the business of giving out bags of both kinds at the same time. So I'd like to ask the council to consider what to do on that particular point. Another point which is the quantitatively unsettled is what is in Mr. Raynone's ordinance as a grace period, which is simply stated in the Environmental Commission ordinance as a date when the ban goes into effect. All ordinances suggest some sort of grace period to allow for adjustment, to allow the supermarkets to finish off the single-use bags that they have, and to encourage users to get reusable plastic bags. The supermarkets are selling for 10 cents even polyethylene film bags with welded handles that are simply somewhat more reusable than the single-use bags they've been giving out. Advice to us from ANJAC, Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, is that we should not accept these. They're simply too easy to throw away, just as people have been throwing away the single-use bags. And in fact, neither of the draft ordinances accept those sort of bags. They ask for bags, whether they be polypropylene or cotton, that have stitched handles, much more substantial bags that you could go on using for a much longer period of time. So I just wanted to, one other thing, Mr. Raynone's ordinance includes, the Environmental Commission ordinance doesn't include, but something I've widely seen, an exemption on the polystyrene foam trays. Anything that comes to the store from the manufacturer already with a polystyrene foam tray that's already, the contents, whatever they're selling, is already wrapped up. We can't expect the stores to stop selling those things. And the other exemption, of course, is for The trays that meat, chicken, fish are sold on, there really is not any alternatives to those currently available. One suggestion that's been made is that we write in an exemption, with that exemption, until the Food and Drug Administration approves an alternative. But this is getting down to fine details. But the paper bag question to me is the most serious question I'd like the council to consider.
Thank you. So, Mr. Attorney, would it be appropriate for us to give our opinions on this, to give you guidance, or say, okay?
Yeah, I mean, this would be the time to do it. You know, the other thing is, and once again, it's a ordinance that there are some other major differences between the two ordinances, and one comes, and I apologize, I don't know, Mr. Smith has got a lot of experience in enforcing state laws, but the language in the enforcement section is not the language of enforcement of a municipal ordinance. There's no such thing, for instance, as the body before which you normally appeal things, which is essentially what you have in the ordinance. There's kind of no such thing. The only way ordinance violations work here is that if you violate an ordinance, you go to municipal. So we have to deal with that. In listening to Councilman Chase, I think we probably would give more freedom to the township manager to designate who it is that enforce this. I put code enforcement in because it's the typical place that you would go for something like this, but the township manager might decide that there's somebody else who wants to do it. I think I agree with Councilman Chase that it really is a matter of us, you know, getting some opinions on ban paper bags or not ban paper bags. And the only other thing, because, you know, following up on Mr. Schmidt, the Environmental Commission apparently only bans bendy plastic straws. For the record, the ordinance that I drafted bans all plastic. That bendy was an exemption for some reason. With exemptions for the bendy straws. No, I never. Or, well, actually.
Exemptions from
and the way we did it was, I think, is consistent with the way the Environmental Commission did it, was we essentially said that you can't give somebody a straw, you can't have a container out for a straw, that you can only give them to them if they request one.
Plastic straws.
Plastic straws, excuse me. And of course, there also is a specific provision for medical. But I think that I agree with Councilman Chase. I think we're kind of all on the same page. But those are really kind of the big issues. And of course, there's the discussion that was raised by the member of the Environmental Commission tonight, which is whether or not you want to now take this thing, which would be then else at food stores, like plastic plates and.
Okay, so why don't we tackle paper bags first? Briefly, if we go down the line, or anyone wishes to speak to Mr. Wright.
So right now, let's, if we can, maybe, Mayor, if I don't want to interfere with running the meeting. I think there's two alternatives here. Otherwise, we'll never get out of here if I don't.
You'll be the first one who doesn't want to interfere with running the meeting.
I think the question is, do you want to have a complete ban on paper bags at some point in time, or do you want to have a provision in the ordinance that allows paper bags with the proposal is a 10-cent per bag charge? I think those are the two alternatives. Right now, the way both ordinances are written, it's a 10-cent charge, and they don't ban paper bags.
If I could just make one more comment I forgot to make. Senator Smith spoke to the Somerset business partnership this morning, and he mentioned that with the bans that have come into effect on plastic bags that have come into effect In New York State, the price of paper bags has gone up, and some people have said it costs 35 cents for a paper bag now. I think we should probably say at least 10 cents.
Yeah, we set a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't set a price for them.
Correct, and
Well,
we can't,
be
obviously,
sure
we can't
that the
require them to
wording
give it for
will-
free either.
So if we, okay, so do people want to ban paper or set a price on paper? Anyone want to weigh in on that?
I'll take a swing. So I definitely recognize the concerns, especially if someone, walks into a store and just totally slips their mind, they don't have a reusable bag, and providing them a way to carry out their purchases in a paper bag. But, and this might be just me being state focused at this point, I would want us to follow as closely as possible to the potential state law that would ultimately supersede anything that we did, and go with the outright ban, especially if we already have supermarkets who just want abolish it altogether. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to help our constituency come up with alternatives and help that change of behavior and do everything we can to provide people with alternatives. But my thoughts are that we start aligning ourselves with the bill that successfully passed out of the Senate last week, and just do an outright ban and just fall in line to what would potentially and hopefully become the law of the land.
Anyone else?
So is the one that passed the Assembly currently allow for, Senate, I'm sorry,
Nothing.
thank you. Currently allow for the purchase of plastic, and I'm not advocating the purchase of plastic, I'm wondering, and the Councilwoman referred to it, young or old, you get to the store and literally you just forgot that slew of canvas bags you meant to put in your trunk, or there's a rotted food product in a couple of them you were going to use. I mean, in an urgency, is there, and people obviously want to change their behavior, but is there anything in that Senate bill that passed that allows for purchasing a plastic bag?
No.
Or that's banned period forever also?
The Senate bill bans paper and plastic.
Okay. Well, I'm not against it. I'm just wondering what happens
You're
in
talking
that
about
scenario.
buying the plastic bags that are thicker.
Buying anything they can get there without, buying a bunch more canvas bags that they just either forgot or have food. That's what I'm saying. Like, what options are there?
Sorry, you can't buy the film bags, but you would be able to purchase what we would consider a reusable.
But it'd have to be, even if you have a bunch, you'd have to buy more of those canvas I'm going to say canvas or maybe hemp if they start making more of those.
Polypropylene, the cheaper ones that look rather like cloth, but they were just polypropylene. They're the kind that, for instance, were given out at the Chamber of Commerce dinner.
So if I can simplify this, what I would suspect is that stores will always have available the purchase of those, the heavier bags, the multiple reusable bags. We're not mandating that, but my guess is for convenience, they're going to have those available. So if someone shows up and doesn't have anything, they could buy that. Now, they might be paying $1.10, $1.20, $2 for it, but that would be available.
Then to make them be more apt to remember the next time. So then, yeah, I also feel like the Councilwoman was suggesting that we should be in line with a bill that is likely going to come out at some point and supersede our bill, or, I mean, our law can't.
Well, as a
At some point.
So as a practical matter, you can try to guess what the legislature is going to ultimately pass. As a practical matter, when the legislature passes it, you have to repeal this. The legislature is going to preempt the field.
Right.
So,
Well, at least in earlier versions, the state bills specifically allowed already adopted municipal ordinances to remain in force. Now, Will that be in the bill that finally comes out? We don't know.
I think we're trying to guess what the legislature will do is not,
Yeah, we can't.
it's not a useful task.
Productive.
Right. So I'll offer a counter view. I do feel for the person who shows up, and, okay, I'll be sexist here. The wife calls and says, pick up this, this, and this on the way home, and he's got no bag in the car, and so what is he gonna do? So I don't mind having the purchase of paper bags. If we want to phase that out after a year, so I guess I'm splitting the difference. So ban plastic after the grace period, allow purchase of paper bags at a minimum of 10 cents for another year, and then ban paper bags would be where I would want to go. So unless someone has something radically different, and to not make this go on forever, do people agree with either one of those? Either the total ban or the half measure of mine? Anyone have an opinion? Mr. Vasanella's,
I'm sorry, Mayor, what you're proposing sounds reasonable. There's a sunset on there, and then eventually it would be banned, right?
do we want to go with that? I'm getting head nods.
So that's,
Okay.
that raises another question.
Oh,
that-
God.
Well, there's a thousand questions, right? So the question is, the question is, once again, the way we structured it, the ordinance is going to take effect immediately. The enforcement of it there's going to be a grace period on the enforcement. That's kind of the way we do it, because the ordinance is going to go on the books. So the question is, when do you want to, what's the date that you want these prohibitions to be effective? Is your contemplation that the plastic bags are going to be immediately, or that's going to be a year?
So plastic bag, 6 months, paper bag, minimum of 10 cents for another 6 months, and then paper bags banned. I'm just throwing something out.
Fine.
So you're saying a minimum of 10 cents, which says that they have to have sell
They
bags
have-
for 10 cents?
They have to have paper bags for that, from 6 months to a year, they have to have paper bags. They have to charge a minimum of 10, I guess they don't have to have. paper
Yeah.
I was
well,
gonna say,
yeah,
why would
no.
you can't mandate that they have them.
You could say they may, but you could say that they have to charge an amount not
Right.
less than 10
Right.
cents.
They are allowed to have paper bags, but have to charge at least 10 cents for paper bags.
Right.
They could right now just stop all bags. We can't make them have bags.
It's called Aldi.
So,
It's called Costco, right?
Yeah.
right.
Costco, there aren't any
Costco,
bags.
BJ's, Aldi, Lidl, it's all of them that don't have bags.
All right, so are we good with that? At 6 months, they cannot have plastic bags, and they can still have paper bags, but have to charge at least 10 cents, and that goes for another 6 months, and then they can't have paper or plastic.
So is that the same 6 months? So for the first 6 months, plastic
Plastic and paper are free.
are free, and then for the 6 months after that, then at that point in time, plastics are
Out.
out.
And paper for a minimum of 10 cents.
Gotcha.
And how long is that for?
6 months.
Months after that.
Okay?
What's the alternative?
Polystyrene, that's the white substance that, when you get meat, it's on that and then wrapped in plastic. Do we want to ban that? Do we want to ban it when they're wrapping it in the store?
No.
No, those are exemptions because there really isn't an alternative. What we're banning is polystyrene foam coffee cups.
Oh, okay.
And also at
Takeout.
takeout restaurants.
And polystyrene takeout.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, does anyone have an objection with that ban?
And that's 6 months?
That, Mr. Chase, did you have 6 months in mind, grace period for that?
Might as well,
Okay.
yeah.
'Cause you have
I
to
mean,
you have to
again,
phase this in
to
for the
allow them
businesses
to
and the
use up their
residents.
present
Right.
stock.
Okay. The pre-manuf, oh, I'm sorry, that we're not, that, the straws were, they can't, someone can ask for a plastic straw, but any straw that they offer, this is at a restaurant, would be a paper straw, and any machine they have would, you know, the straw dispensers would be a paper straw. Everyone good with that? That would be a 6-month, everything's going to be 6-month grace period.
Yes, but I thought the medical exemption still allowed for plastic straw.
If they ask for it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right.
That's fine. Well, fine with me.
And then I will give this to Mr. Schmidt, I will at least discuss it. The banning of the sale of plastic plates and forks. So this isn't just the single use at the single one you get in your, you know, takeout food. The actual, you can't walk down the aisle and find a box of a box of forks and spoons or plastic plates or plastic cups. Does anyone want to pass that?
That one's a little tougher right now. I think that's
Going
as
too
much as I
far.
want to try to go far. I think right now the plastic bag ban, paper bag ban takes us starting off, and then we can visit that after we start seeing the impact. I mean,
I agree with
start small.
Councilman.
I agree as well. And Dinny, who was the woman who spoke here so eloquently when we discussed this the first time, I asked her about this, that everything's made of plastic. What do we do? And her point was, yes, at this point, everything we purchase comes in plastic, but we need to start somewhere to wean our dependence off this toxin, et cetera, et cetera. So she's basically saying, go for the low-hanging fruit, and we can advance later on. Does anyone else have any other items or issues to throw to the attorney to help him draft this?
I just have a question.
Yes, sir.
So let's say you're having a gathering at your house and you order a couple of tinfoil trays, I guess is probably not, but you know, foil trays of lasagna or spaghetti or any type of food from all these places we have in town. They bring them to your house sometimes, you go pick them up. I'm not passing judgment, I'm just asking, would this outlaw them from providing you a bunch of paper plates or forks with that, I'm going to call it catered batch of food that you're picking up or they're delivering?
Well, it wouldn't ban them, interestingly, it wouldn't ban them from giving you paper plates, but it would ban them from giving you plastic utensils because that's takeout.
And if they were delivering them to your home?
Still takeout. I mean, it's no different. You get a pizza delivered to your house, it's still takeout, right?
Yeah, no, I understand, I'm not debating, I'm
So
just
the
trying to
answer is-
put into
yeah,
practical terms,
because it would be,
practical
it would
realities
be-
for people?
Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah, absolutely, it would be plastic utensils, yes. They couldn't. Now, as the mayor indicated, you could go to a food store and buy them, but they couldn't provide them to you.
So
you can't get, so just so everybody understands what the attorney just said. So if you go to a restaurant and get food to take out that you bring to your place of employment or whatever, you do not get utensils.
Correct. Well, you can't get.
You can get
can't get plastic
bamboo
ones.
utensils.
No, you can't, they're not going to give you free ones, Councilman. They're not going to give you free bamboo ones. You are not going to have something to eat unless you have utensils. And in this particular case, you're talking about only a township prohibition as opposed to a statewide prohibition. So when our restaurants are not allowed to give out utensils to their customers when they get takeout food, they might perhaps go across the street to restaurants across the street because otherwise they won't be able to eat them because people are not going to generally carry around reusable utensils in their car.
So I'm wondering, Mayor, if we can maybe hear from Dr. Chase or even Mr. Schmidt, if we can. I'm just, again, I'm all for this, but I want to make sure we're understanding the practical ramifications if someone's having a gathering at their house and they're expecting a bunch of, or at work, like the manager said, I'm thinking also like for sanitary reasons, what do you do, share forks? I mean, was that discussed at all? Is there a solution maybe I'm not seeing to that?
So you're saying if you have a backyard picnic and you want to have plastic utensils and paper plates, can you do that?
Somebody's
Is that
bringing
your
over a
question?
bunch
You
of
can buy
pasta or
them in the
Chinese
store.
food.
The
Yeah, well,
answer,
most of the time
is
you're
you
getting things
can't-
catered, it's
so-
because you're having it brought there. And
So we're talking about food service establishments that deliver or takeout, that's essentially takeout food. The answer is yes, they would be banned, but that doesn't mean that you can't go to a food store and buy them.
It also doesn't mean that if you order your food from a caterer in another town, that they can't bring the plastic forks, because now it's being purchased from a merchant in another town that doesn't have the prohibition.
I don't think I agree with you. I think that it would prohibit if people from delivering that stuff into town too.
Well, I don't know how you regulate that. I'm going to tell you from an enforcement point of view, as a police officer, you would have no way of enforcing that. If it was purchased from a vendor in New Brunswick who permits the sale of food to go along with free plastic utensils, and it was put in a truck and delivered here, you would have a hell of a hard time enforcing that.
I'm not telling you that.
I don't think it should be prohibited. That's my point.
You might have a hard time enforcing all of this, but the answer is, I think that's the contemplation. And by the way, I think that, I'm not sure, but I'd have to go back and take a look at this, whether the state law deals with that at all, but.
Well,
but it'd be
if it was a state law, it would be prohibited statewide, so then we would only have to worry about food being imported from New York or Pennsylvania. I'm not concerned about that. I think that in this particular case, if this council is considering the prohibition of plastic utensils, then you have to understand that the impact on that when you do this only as a municipality rather than statewide is that now people will be ordering food from your restaurants and they won't be able to provide something to eat that food with. And they might just decide that rather than buy food from restaurants here, they'll buy food from restaurants somewhere else. That's an impact, an economic impact that you might find is not a planned consequence of this action.
I think
Well, the food vendor could add the bamboo forks and add 10 cents to the price. Mr. Reno, what do they do in Long Branch?
Well, to tell you the truth, it hasn't gone into effect in Long Branch yet. I can tell you, in Atlantic Highlands, I'm trying to think, I live right on the border, and I don't think that I've gotten a delivery from anybody there. I know that the plastic bag restriction has gone into effect. But to answer Mr. Vornlocker's question, the problem with doing this by municipal ordinance is that you have a possibility that people won't shop at the ShopRite in Franklin.
That's correct.
That they'll go to the next town because there's, and the interesting part for me is, as I said, I live on the border. I have an Atlantic Highlands mailing address, but I live in Middletown Township. The food store that I go to is in Atlantic Highlands. The other food store I go to is in Middletown, which doesn't have that and has
Right.
plastic bags.
And so, and the mayor and I, along with some others, met with a representative of a local grocery store as well as a consultant hired by the grocery industry, and they are very much in favor of a ban, but a statewide ban.
Right.
And some of the things that they talked about were the things that the township attorney just raised.
So, all right, so in my opinion, I'm actually not looking to ban utensils in takeout food. That's one. Do others agree with that?
So I agree, because just thinking of workplace, that you don't know when you're, you don't know when people might be staying late, or when you might have suddenly a lunch brought in or something because you might have a vendor come in or something like that. So I think to that point, you can't account for if you've got 20 pieces of silverware or something like that around. I think the plastic bag and paper bag and some of the efforts that we're making are our initial step, and then we come back and revisit this, and not throwing it out saying that we never want to do this, but I think to everybody's point, we've got to take into account our businesses also. So, with the rise of challenge of Grubhub and all the other food delivery services, it's going to expand that maybe our businesses might not get it as much. So, and going into other towns. So
Does anyone strongly want to ban the utensils and takeout food?
No.
No.
Is there any other direction you need? Here. How much do we, he just struck that out. How much do we owe you for that?
Nothing.
Um,
Come on, Don.
Is there any more direction you feel you need?
No, I think, well, I think that I have it, so,
Any other direction you think you need to give Mr. Chase?
No, I think we've had our discussion.
And
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I just want to, I guess, reemphasize that this is an initial step. This does not mean that that we don't want to revisit this in the near future, but this is where we're taking our initial attempt to try to do our part to help the environment, and then we come back to this.
So someone did indicate to me at one point that if there is a grandfathering clause, if we want to get something in that the state may not allow in the future, now would be the time to get it in. I'm comfortable with where we are. I'm just throwing that out there. Hearing none, I'm ready to move on to the next item. Objections? Okay. All right. We're now on to approval of the minutes. I present the following minutes for approval by the Township Council. Executive sessions on November 6th and February 25th. Budget meetings on February 10th and 18th at 7 p.m. Work session and regular meetings on February 11th and 25th. The one on the 11th was at 7 p.m. and the one on the 25th was at 6 p.m. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Anyone want to make changes, comments?
I need to actually abstain out of.
So can we just vote with it? She can vote and say abstention on the particular item.
Okay.
Any other comments? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Jaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
I'll need to abstain on the executive session on November 26th, but approve the rest of the minutes. Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
He stepped out.
And Councilman Wright?
Approval of the warrants in the amount of $14,833,006.85 on March 10th, 2020 are presented to the Township Council for payment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Do I have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Anyone want to pull an item? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Jaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
The calendar year 2020 municipal budget, Resolution 20-98, introduction of the calendar year 2020 municipal budget and set public hearing is presented to the Township Council for adoption. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is this the budget
Mr. Mayor, I have a
introduction?
statement to read.
Absolutely.
So,
Budget.
Mayor and Township Council, calendar year 2020 budget message. So Franklin Township has had many positive things in development, including the building and anticipated opening in September 2020 of the new Franklin Township Youth Center, a continued focus and demonstrated success in bringing additional economic development to Franklin Township, continued commitment to roads, sidewalk, and infrastructure repairs, as well as significant improvements to several township parks. However, these costs and the continued efficient operation of township services require a careful balancing act between providing maximum quality services to the community, community capital, and repair costs, and maintaining taxes at a reasonable level. The budget summary, and you all have this if you want to follow along. The proposed calendar year 2020 budget is submitted with a total Franklin Township current fund budget appropriation of $62,827,195.19, which is $895,857, or 1.45% above the 2019 budget appropriation of $61,931,338. Key budget increases include an increase in projected debt service interest of approximately $350,000 as we bond for the youth center and other capital improvements. Increase of $250,000 in the reserve for tax appeals due to tax court settlements of multi-year appeals going back as far as 2008. Increase in salary and wage of about $800,000 due to contracts. $200,000 increase in the reserve for uncollected taxes, a state-required mathematical calculation that provides a reserve as the tax base rises. However, if not needed, the funds go back into the township fund balance. That's also referred to as the reserve for uncollected taxes that we've spoken about a number of times. However, these increases were offset by a $550,000 decrease in negotiated employee and retiree health insurance costs, a net decrease in the total of all department annual operational expenses of $86,000. And during the past 7 years since the calendar year 2014 budget, efficiency efforts have resulted in the annual utilities budget decreasing by $716,000, or 23.86%. over the 7 years, including an additional reduction of $40,000 in 2020. Many of the planned capital initiatives are designed to increase the annual savings in utilities. Based on these factors and anticipated increases in debt service expenses over the next few years, Council has identified the need to increase the calendar year 2020 municipal tax levy $614,888.79, or 1.75%, bringing tax from 2019 at $35,136,502 to $35,751,390.79. The municipal tax rate will actually decrease from 0.345 in 2019 to 0.338, down 1.91%. That's due obviously to the increase in the rateable base. With the increased assessed valuations, the average home at $344,430 will see a municipal only, again going back to Councilman Wright, municipal only tax of $1,164.01, an increase of $4.77. That's taking into account the average home this year versus the average home last year, which obviously due to an increase in rateable base means that the increase in the average home also went up. Municipal budget without library tax went up 1.46% versus 1.55% in 2019. And to prevent a higher tax increase, an additional $286,760.66 was taken from anticipated surplus, taking it from $7,271,686 for 2018 and 2019 to $7,558,446.66 in 2020. The calendar year 2020 budget continues to demonstrate the township's prioritization of improved efficiency and effectiveness, careful spending, and also working towards providing increased services, responsiveness, and convenience for our constituents. Assessed valuations. Franklin Township's assessed valuations for 2020 have been set at $10,578,834,429. This represents an increase of $380,511,746 over the 2019 valuation, or a 3.73% increase in the valuation. An increase in assessed values has a positive impact on the applicable tax rates. Taking the increase in ratables at last year's municipal tax rate, this increase in value amounts to an increase of $1,312,766 in taxation. As a result, in comparing tax rates using the budget as it stands at this point, there will be a $614,888.79 increase in the dollar amount to be raised by municipal taxation, and the impact upon the municipal tax rate will be a decrease of 0.007 or 1.91%.
Any other comments?
Mayor?
Mr. Vassinello.
Yes. So overall, I think it is an excellent budget. There's one item that I just became aware of a few days ago and still actually haven't seen, but my understanding is there was something, one appropriation that was adjusted. So real quick, I just want a minute of a description of what that is, and then I'll most likely be making a motion relevant to that. Most of you know about last spring you were here. We had a joint meeting of the Hamilton Board and the Council. We talked about a lot of important items. One important thing that came out of that meeting was a commitment to significantly start improving the infrastructure of some problems regarding drainage, streets, right-of-ways, et cetera. Well, it was a commitment I think we were all proud to start moving forward on. Fast forward, what came out of that meeting is we were going, this was last spring, approximately a year ago, last summer, we had interns from Rutgers go out and do an analysis with the supervision of our DPW and engineering department, and came back with a bunch of information so we can get started on the project this year. Unfortunately, with the meetings recently where council has been meeting early to be involved somewhat in the public safety director situation, hiring and whatnot, we have not had a council public works meeting, and the last meeting that we did have earlier in the year, we did not have the report or information or talk about what we may want to do or not do or the costs associated with it. So originally when the budget was presented here at the hearings, it was brought up and again had support, I thought, from all or most of the council, and there was an appropriation of $750,000. From what I understand a couple days ago, from what I've heard, it was being reduced to $500,000. There was not a lot of clarity on why or what it would actually get done or not get done with that amount missing, et cetera. Understand we've been very busy, so we did not have the time to review it appropriately in Public Works. So the bottom line is I had a substantial conversation with the manager today, and now I'm up to speed on quite a bit that we had not been aware of previous. I want to mention, so the council's all aware, this work, at least this year, will be bonded, whatever amount of work we do. So that $250,000 difference is not a $250,000 cost savings to our taxpayer by any means. As we all know, it's $12,500, which is the 5% amount that you use for bonding. So my concern is this. After talking to the manager, and I think we agree on everything except apparently a street had been earmarked, I think a couple thousand linear feet, and a quick cost estimate, thinking that could be done for $500,000. Well, my colleagues on the Public Works Committee and I would like to look at more of these details because, and I will be making a motion in a moment, because perhaps we will do that street. Perhaps it will cost more, perhaps it will cost less, perhaps there's 2 medium-sized streets that we'll do, or we're not sure. Of course, we don't make the decision, but we make a recommendation based on the work that was put into it. So as of now, I, and on behalf, I believe, of my colleagues on that committee, and hopefully others, want the opportunity, want to leave the $750,000 amount in the budget, which again only reflects a $12,500 amount for the taxpayers, and go back and review the amount, go back and review the details, and make a recommendation to council. Maybe we can only do that much this year. Maybe we can do amount. I'd rather be aggressive and optimistic in this. This is a multi-year plan that's going to cost millions and millions of dollars, and we kind of need to get out of the gate in a good way. And we will make that recommendation, and council can review it and make sure you have the information accordingly, and well before the final budget hearing or final vote on the budget. And if the majority of council would like to take out any amount and make it $500, $750, or anywhere in between, so be it. But it's much easier to have it there and then remove it if need be than to go and try to put it in there later. And it was in the original budget. And again, up till a couple days ago, we were all unaware of it being removed. So my motion is, based on us doing that work and making a recommendation, council having the last bite at the apple, to keep it in there now at $750,000 as opposed to the $5. That's the only part of the manager's proposed budget that I believe needs to be amended. So that would be my motion.
So that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So a motion and a second. Mr. Manager, do you have a response?
So I take some there are some things that I'd like to call attention to on what Councilman Vasanella just said that I don't find are necessarily accurate. One, it's not just $12,500, it's $250,000. Debt is debt. I mean, if we bond it, it's debt. It's taxpayer money that has to pay back the debt plus interest. So it is an additional $250,000 that might not reflect in the bottom line on what is the amount to be budgeted this year, but debt service is part of that, and debt service will come in future years once we sell the bonds and have to pay back the debt. So that's one. So it's not that it isn't taxpayer money. It will be more than $250,000 in taxpayer money that pays it back. And I try not to fund projects via bond that won't be done in the calendar year in which they're appropriated. In this particular case, I asked the Public Works Manager to provide me a figure for preliminary discussion in budget hearings and capital budget meetings prior to the budget hearings, and he provided me a number with $750,000. Initially, we looked at several streets that didn't require full reconstruction to include curbs, drainage, and sidewalks, because the roads that we were looking at from a water main standpoint already had sidewalks and curbs and drainage. There was an additional amount of money budgeted in this year's water budget, another $1 million in main replacement that will be utilized to replace the water mains on those roads that already have curbs, sidewalks, and drainage. So now we move to other neighborhoods to decide where we could do streetscape improvements to include water main, curb, sidewalk, drainage. One full package. The roads that we determined we could do in this calendar year were limited to between 1,500 and 2,000 linear feet based on the amount of work to be done on all of the different phases of the improvement, because it has to be staged in such a way, it's weather contingent, and a portion of the work will be done by our Public Works Department as opposed to out to bid for contracts with outside contractors. The 1,500 to 2,000 foot range roads will cost, for those improvements outside of the water main and laterals for water services and paving, about $500,000. That's why the number came down from 750 to 500. I had the discussion with the Public Works Manager again as recently as yesterday about this, and there are a number of streets where these improvements could be done as the first phase of what's going to be a multiple phase project. But looking forward to 2021 in debt service, I felt it was more appropriate and more responsible to lower the number to $500,000, because that is the amount of work that we can get done this year. And if there's a need, and when we begin to do the full engineering and go out to bid for the parts of the work that we're not doing, this is a capital ordinance that will be adopted by council after the approval of this budget. It'll be a bond ordinance that will be approved by the Township Council as part of that. And if it needs to be amended to increase the amount because there was insufficient amounts of money budgeted at that time, then that can be done. And you can do it by ordinance amendment at any time. It doesn't have to be done now, and the anticipation still is that in calendar year 2020, this is the amount of work that we can get done. That's why it was budgeted at that number.
Mr. Vasanella, no one's going to speak twice till everyone has an opportunity to speak once. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Yeah. I would like Vasanella to take my turn and say something.
So no, we're not going to do that.
Yes, you are.
No, we're not.
Yes, you
So
are.
anyone else wish to speak?
Yes. Now, Councilman Vasanella and I can have a conversation between the two of us.
No, Mr.
No,
Wright.
no. You sat there and talked about this bag thing all night long, and I go along with it because I agree with it. But this is something very important, and you're not going to sweep this under the rug. Councilman Vasanella has something very important to discuss. You can hit that hammer all you want.
Mr. Wright.
No.
Mr. Wright.
No.
I am running this meeting.
No.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Councilman Vasanella, do you have anything else you want to say? Councilman Vasanella, do you have anything else you want to say?
I'll wait till the others have spoken. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to speak? Any other comments?
I guess the clarification here is, right now, we're asking to temporarily put this in until Public Works can review, with the understanding that most likely, or that this number may come down again, but it's just that we haven't had a chance to review the projects. Is that correct?
Yes, that we have not been able to do the due diligence, and when something was removed a couple days ago.
Wait.
I'm not answering Mr. Galtieri if I could.
Wait.
Okay.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Galtieri?
So my comment, that was part of my question leading into the comment that, so given that we haven't had the meeting to review this, this is why, so from my perspective, while I'm not inclined to just add another $250,000 to our budget, it's to do the due diligence on this a little bit. So I think right now, this is just my interpretation, and I want to make sure I'm interpreting this correct. It's to temporarily put the line item at where it was originally presented to us, while we can review sometime in the next 2 weeks as a committee, bring it back to the council as a whole to give a full picture, and then if we see it, then we go back to the $500,000 that's recommended by our CFO and our township manager and our public works department. But I want to make sure that I'm interpreting this understanding this correctly.
So does the manager have an answer to that?
Correct. So no, exactly. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
So the question, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is how does it best work if there's a question about this, to let it be 750 now and then correct it downward, or to keep it at the 500 and correct it upward? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So let me be clear here. If you make it $750,000, even on a downward, bringing it back down to $500,000 will require an amended budget, because it'll be a significant change to the budget, and it will delay this budget process. So because you'll have to basically reintroduce the budget in a month, because that's what you'll be doing. Instead of adopting the budget, you'll be reintroducing the budget. So let me finish.
Okay.
So that's what happens if you choose to include it as $750,000 today and move it to $500,000 at some future date. You'll have to reintroduce the budget, because it will be considered a significant change to the budget. Now, if you leave it at $500,000 and for some reason the project, the scope of the project increases, by ordinance, council has the authority to spend money. This is a budget process to include money in the capital improvement fund. All right, we have an obligation to do that. If council chooses at a later date, after the adoption of the budget, for this project to be increased in scope beyond the $500,000, you will do it by ordinance amendment to the capital ordinance and the bond ordinance.
Okay.
So, am I to understand, then it cannot also be raised in, well, let me back up for a minute. I want to clarify something Mr. Volnacher said. You're right, when you bond your borrowing, this is a multi-million-dollar project over multiple years. So I'd rather not borrow more next year and start paying back later. Exactly. If we know we have a project that is large in scope and cost over time, the sooner we get going and whatever we can possibly get accomplished, that's right. You do borrow the money, and hopefully borrow it at a very low rate, and start paying it back sooner, and the debt will be gone sooner. But the point is, as far as it reflects on people's tax bills, it's $12,500, which literally, you're talking literally about pennies. And I know what happened when Mr. Wright's sidewalk projects and other big projects, they get delayed, they get brought down, they get delayed, they get brought down, and we're always trying to catch up, and to try to have an ordinance and a new ordinance introduction, and then a passage and a conversation, this will be bogged down in committees and reviews and ordinances to where, you know what, if we don't spend the full, if we can't do the work by, get a cold fall and you got to do a little bit in April or May, that happens all the time with capital projects like this.
So, Mr. Mayor, I need to just stop right there. This is not like a typical road overlay project. This project needs to be phased with water contracts, concrete contracts, and storm sewer installations. It's not something that you can do part of the job now and part of the job later. It's going to include the paving of the road after the water utilities are installed, and things have to be phased together, so it has to be done as a complete project and not piecemeal. And that's part of the problem here, in that we can't go look beyond what we have the ability to do.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken wish to speak? Mr. Chase.
I just want to, if I understood Mr. Vornlocker correctly, he's saying we can't cut the budget without reintroducing it and taking extra time. But we can spend more than is in the budget simply by ordinance. Is that
So
what you're
after
saying?
that's absolutely true. The budget process itself, put aside, make them separate things for now. The Township Council has the ability to spend money 3 different ways: by budget, by ordinance, or by trust. Those are the 3 ways in the state of New Jersey that money can be spent. In this particular case, you do capital ordinances periodically throughout the year. So say, for instance, you do a capital ordinance to buy a piece of property. That wasn't budgeted. You do it by ordinance, and then you buy the property. We've done that a number of times over the last several years. So if, in fact, there is a need for additional monies for a project, the ordinance needs to be amended, and it needs, and the funding ordinance in this case, because it's not just a capital ordinance for cash, it would be a bond ordinance. So the bond ordinance would need to be amended to increase that bond ordinance, increase that capital ordinance to allow for the additional costs. So yes, that is an option. But the budget process is governed by the laws that say, once you introduce a budget, if it has a substantial change, it requires reintroduction. It's a function of the budget process, not a function of spending.
And just I add one other really technical thing to this, is that, remember, the budget is the budget. The capital it's not a capital budget, it's a capital plan. So what happens is that when you pass a bond ordinance, and I think this is what Mr. Hornlocker is saying, you may not, if you read all 50 pages of the bond ordinance, you'll see in there that it amends the capital budget, right? So the answer is if you decide that it's 750 instead of 500, that ordinance also amends and that, by the way, that's something you can't do with your operating budget, but because it's only it's
Right.
a 6-year capital plan. You put the plan, it's adopted to it's attached to your budget, but you amend it from time to time every time you pass a bond ordinance. I think that's what the point Mr. Vornlocker is trying to make.
That's correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to jump in here.
Yes, ma'am.
So the Financial Oversight Subcommittee met for 2 months on this budget, and we spent hours and hours and hours and hours coming up to this point now. And we need to adopt the budget. I think you've all heard that if we do this project and we need to spend more money, we can go back out and amend the bond ordinance. So in the sake of time and the fact that we need to adhere to the budget process, we do not want to change this budget and have to go back and reintroduce it. I think we should move this budget forward at the way it is. And be respectful of the fact that the Finance Subcommittee did everything we could to hold the tax rate stable in this budget.
Anyone else?
Yes, I think I'm supporting Council Chamberlain. We should adopt it the way it is. If we need more money, then we can go for that.
Anyone else?
Councilman Vasanella, are you satisfied?
So, Mr. Wright, anyone else who hasn't yet spoken?
Now, you sat here with the paper bag and everybody had 25 chips at the apple. You don't like this amendment and you're going to play hardball?
No, Mr. Wright, that isn't what I'm doing. I'm trying to run this in an organized fashion. I'm trying to give everyone a chance to speak so that everyone gets their input. You're not running the meeting. It's not your right to call on Mr. Vasanella. I've recognized you, I've recognized Mr. Vasanella, and if you want a second bite of the apple, you can get that after everyone gets a chance to speak. So is there anyone else who hasn't gotten a chance to speak who wishes to speak? Ms. Pruitt?
I just had a procedural question. I know that my colleague on the Financial Oversight Committee obviously wants to move this budget, but just out of curiosity, the mayor did say if we had to go back and change it, it pushes us back a month. What does that mean for the township if we are delayed a month approving our own budget? Practically speaking, what does that do to
Also,
us?
practically speaking, you have many other capital projects that will not begin on time. So things like the road overlay project, which generally needs to go out to bid immediately following the estoppel period on the adoption of the budget, means that it'll be delayed another month, which means you won't get nearly as much as far as street paving done in this calendar year. And then just we'll continue to operate on a temporary budget, so all the regular municipal expenses won't be able to take place. And I'm getting to that one. And so there's that. And then, you know, we are obligated under state law to adopt a budget in a manner by a deadline, and we'll miss that deadline. So, you know, when we do that that best practices discussion in October that I'll do with you, we'll say no to that one when we answer that question. And there are potential ramifications to not meeting DCA deadlines.
Mayor, I just have a comment.
Mr. Anbarson.
Yeah, so I think I listened to Councilman Vasanella's concern, and I think the process seems to allow at a future date an ordinance to include additional funds for the project. I think with that in mind, the understanding that we would have an opportunity to do that, I also think that we should move forward with the budget as presented, with the caveat that we have the ability to put an ordinance together later on.
Okay, so now for my input, it's $12,500, but it's $12,500 every year for 20 years. So I think we need to make that clear. There's no free money, and it's $12,500 with interest, so we're eventually paying more. The manager is informing us that we can't do the work. We are spending a lot of money on a youth center. That's our cake and our icing on the cake, and it's a wonderful thing, and it's a cherry on top, but we really don't want to be taxing money that especially when we can't be spending it. So now everyone has spoken once. Mr. Vasanella?
Well, first, I just want to make sure, because the attorney seems to, well, I'll ask him, what is considered a substantial change?
I'm going to defer to the...
Because my understanding is you can make slight changes in the budget we have in the past between the introduction and so nobody, including myself especially, is setting out to delay the budget. So those, I think, were a little overblown.
So you asked
comments.
a question.
So what is the substantial change that we would or would not be allowed to make without it delaying the budget? Because it sounds like that's a big concern. It's a concern of mine also.
So actually, could you come to the mic and speak in the mic?
We'd be making a change in a budget line that would exceed 5%.
5% of what?
The budget line.
Okay,
That line.
so what is allowable, 5%? Up to 5%?
Right.
Okay, so what is 5% of 500,000? What is the allowable amount?
5%
that
of
we
500,000
cannot-
is $25,000.
$25,000.
So you're saying anything beyond, and I just want clarity here, because no one's intention, especially mine, is to delay the budget a month. So I want to understand, we are never allowed to increase a budget line item more than 5,000, more than 5% of what it's introduced at.
That's correct.
Without amending the budget, giving it another 28 days after introduction for public to review, and then adopting the budget. We can do it, but it would have to be.
No, I know, that's what I'm trying to understand, because, again, just like the information concerning the projection of what we might be able to do or what it might cost this year is, again, was never given. You know, these are the, no, I don't want to get into it. The bottom line is also, I want to address what the mayor said. I don't think you're suggesting we should never do the work. So when you say that it's money that we shouldn't borrow if we're not going to use, you're saying that we're not going to do this project over time?
No, I'm saying.
Well, then
that-
we would be paying it for the next 20 years anyway.
I'm sorry you asked me a question. I'm saying, why bond for it now this year if we're not going to spend it until next year? We can bond for it next year when we're going to spend it.
Okay, so then, I'm gonna adjust I'm gonna amend my amendment if I'm allowed to, or what is the proper, I want
So-
to change what I'm,
Okay.
okay. So I'm gonna try to find some middle ground here so we don't have to delay the budget, and then we have a little bit of a cushion because we have not seen the proposal or the costs related to it. I'm going to ask a motion, I'm gonna make a motion that we amend that $500,000
So-
figure to.
Go ahead, sorry.
That $500,000 figure to $600,000. And we'll do an ongoing review, and we can go the route Mr. Vornlocker talked about if we decide we need to do much more. Through the option he suggested. But in the meanwhile, that gives us a little bit more of a cushion because we have not seen any figures. No, I know, what I'm saying is.
He's changed, so Mr. Vasanella is speaking. Give him the floor. What Mr. Vasanella originally did was asked for, to amend it from 500,000 to 750,000. He is now changing that from 500,000 to 600,000 instead of the 750,000. Am I correct?
Yes, in this
So
way
that-
we,
So
yes.
the person who made the motion has changed the motion. Mr. Wright, you seconded the motion. Is that change okay with you? Mr. Wright? Mr. Wright? Mr. Wright, Mr. Vasanella changed his motion from a change of 500,000 to 750. That was the original motion. He has now changed it from 500,000 to 600,000. You were the one who seconded it, so I'm asking you, is that motion okay with you? They're whispering in some. Okay. I whispered with my mic on and your mic on. I guess it's not a quorum, so okay. They can whisper. The question to you, Mr. Wright, are you okay with changing the second? Into the mic, please. So you're changing your second? You're
Yes,
accepting the change? Okay, so now the amendment is to change it from 500,000 to 600,000. Does anyone else have a comment on that?
I call the question.
So, does anyone else, please, before you call the question, let someone make a comment. Someone may have a comment on that. Does anyone else have a comment on that?
Mayor, I just checked with the manager. So the amendment as proposed is not going to delay the budget. Not yet introduced.
So only a change to the budget could have the potential to delay the process. You haven't introduced the budget yet, so any change to the budget, no matter what substance, is the change
Yeah,
before
but
introduction.
This would not delay things.
No.
Anyone else have a comment?
Mayor, we would just have to recalculate.
What do you mean, if it went from,
Yeah.
it wouldn't change?
Would it?
No, I mean, so it would,
Will there be a substantive change to the budget?
so
No.
what we could do is we could either take more, another 100,000 out of surplus, well, the bonding amount difference
No,
out of surplus.
$5,000.
5,000 out of surplus, or we could increase the amount to be raised by taxes by that. We'll handle that in a minute. So we have a motion to increase to increase it by 100,000 more. We have a second. Any other comments on that? So Mr. Chase made a motion to call the vote. Do we have a second on, never mind. Let's just call the vote. There's no other comments. We're calling the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
No, given the manager's explanation, I think we can stick with the original figure.
So no speeches, you can only vote.
Councilwoman Francois?
Well, I'm not sure. Are we, Mr. Bonnacher?
Yes, ma'am.
So we're saying that this is not going to have any impact on the tax rate? Or
So
the changes
we're
that
going to start the vote again
Because
after
I have a question, so I don't know how to
Okay,
vote.
So hang
So
on.
you want me to abstain?
No. Let me just explain. The reason why there's no speeches during a vote is because the last person who gets the vote doesn't get to make a speech. So the appropriate time to ask questions is during the discussion. So we're going to stop the vote. No one's vote is counting now. You have a question, and we'll
And I'll answer.
restart the vote after.
So the answer is, it will not, this increase of $100,000 in a capital project will not increase, depending on how we fund it, and I'll say it will not increase the amount to be raised by taxes, which is a direct reflection on the tax rate versus the rateable base, right? So we're not going to make it go up any more than it is proposed to already go up. But we will take the additional $5,000 for the capital improvement fund from fund balance. So it'll be a little bit more than that number I read to you. But it will increase our debt by another $100,000. So there is a direct reflection on the financial state of the municipality, because it's an additional $100,000 of debt or not.
No, that's not bad.
Okay.
So that's the impact, Councilwoman. Is that okay?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
So I'll have a question.
Chase has a question too.
So I'll ask a question. So does changing this from, instead of 750, making it 600, does that give you more ability to do the work, which you have stated you can only do $500,000 worth of
So
work?
I said, let's clarify what I said.
Okay.
I didn't say that I could only do $500,000 worth of work. We anticipate a road between 1,500 and 2,000 linear feet to cost us around $500,000, which is how we would generally budget for a capital project like this. We haven't done full engineering because we don't do full engineering on capital projects until the capital project is approved, because it costs money for us to do full engineering. So that's our anticipated cost for a 1,500 to 2,000 linear foot road that needs all of those things done: sidewalks, curbs, drainage. All right. There are a number of roads in the 4th Ward, in the areas off of Hamilton Street, that would benefit from a project like that, and most of them are in the 1,500 to 2,000 square linear foot range. So looking at them, to budget more, in my opinion, was not necessary. If we needed to amend an ordinance, we could do so, because it's not as if we're going to do $100,000 of another road, because this is a full-blown project, full reconstruction of a road, water, sewer, curbing, and sidewalks, so that you can't just do a little bit of a road. You can't just do a couple 100 feet of a road. You do the full road. The drainage has to go somewhere, so it has to connect to something. So this project has more implications than that. Now, if we have $600,000, does that mean that maybe we won't have to go back for an ordinance amendment for the one project that we're doing? Maybe. I mean, but the bottom line is, I didn't think it was necessary. I mean, and I won't argue the point that it's $5,000 in cash, but the bottom line is, if you incur the debt, you incur the debt.
Mr. Chase?
Well, I just wanted to point out that it's not the difference between incurring the debt and not incurring the debt. It's the difference between incurring it this year and next year. So just.
Okay. Anyone else?
So I just want to put it on record that we spent a lot of time in financial oversight on this particular item because every one of us felt that this project was very significant and very important. We did not discount the need to do this project. We were using our fiduciary responsibility by doing what we did with the $500,000. Now, if we put $600,000 and it's not going to have that big of an impact, let's just go ahead and move this forward.
I second that we all care about this project, and any characterization otherwise would be inaccurate.
Mayor, I do want to say, I know we all do care about the project, and the only thing I want to add is that we don't know if we're going to do 1,500, 2,000. We might do one street that's 1,000 and one that's 1,200. That's the work that we haven't done yet, and that's the only reason, or that's the reason I'm saying we should give ourselves a little bit of a cushion, because we don't know what road we're doing. That's the part that's been left out of this equation, and I'd rather be a little bit more assertive here. We were just told that it's not going to affect the amount of the tax. So again, I just ask the 600,000 be added, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I think this is the better process to follow, Mayor.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Mr. Wright, please stop that.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Vasanella? That was a gentlemanly coronavirus handshake.
Thank you. And Mayor, I do know we're all committed and care about this project. So
Okay.
any indication that anybody thinks otherwise, it's not
So,
anything I meant.
believe it or not, we've not voted on I'm sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, I just want to be clear there.
You got a
because
whole bunch of resolutions and ordinances coming.
Yes, that's exactly,
didn't introduce yet.
right. We've not voted on the
Well,
ordinance.
I will gladly make a motion to
No,
move the.
no,
We already
the
did.
motion is already there. We've discussed it, we've amended it, and unless there is more discussion on the motion,
Yep.
we have a motion to introduce the budget as amended. Madam Clerk, we're now
Coun-
voting on the budget.
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Resolution 2099, self-examination of budget resolution as required by DCA is presented to the Township Council for adoption. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Mr. Vornlocker. No, wait, Mr. Vornlocker, if you. Okay, because I don't recall what this little section is. Can you, into the mic.
As a request of yours,
Uh-oh.
know what it is.
Changing the fund balance.
No.
What?
Website.
Oh, the website.
So what is the self-examination budget resolution?
Yes.
So the self-examination of budget means that we do our own self-audit of the budget as opposed to having the audit done by DCA.
Oh, okay. And I had asked, back to what the comment you had just made, I had asked as soon as we passed the introduction that it be put up on the website, but because of this alteration, it's going to take a little.
Well, obviously, it's a budget document that's prepared, and so I have to do it over. But, I mean, not me. Someone else will have to do it over, not me.
So that's why it's not instantly showing up there. I'm
It
sure
is
it'll
there,
show-
and it's coming down, so look fast.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second on this. Any other discussion on this resolution? Madam Clerk.
Councilman Ambarson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Ordinance 4317-20, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limits to establish a cap bank, calendar year 2020. The foregoing ordinance is presented to Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with the law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, March 24th, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the municipal complex. Do we have a motion
So moved.
to introduce?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Vornlocker, I always get this a little bit wrong, so I'll let you just, so you don't have to correct me, just spell out what this one means.
So this ordinance allows for us to move monies based on a formula into a cap bank because we're under the cap. Our budget is under the cap, and there's a calculation that is done that allows us to move monies into a cap bank that's used for, I think, 6 years is how it transfers through, and it goes, so money from this year will last for 6 years, so it only keeps the last 6 years cap bank in the event that we needed to exceed the 2% appropriations cap.
Do I have a motion
we
and a
don't.
second? Any other discussion? Madam Clerk.
Councilman Ambarson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Calendar year 2020, Hamilton Street Special Improvement District budget. So there's a separate budget for the Special Improvement District. Resolution 20-100. Introduction of the calendar year 2020 Hamilton Street SID budget and set public hearing date is presented to Township Council for adoption. When is the public hearing date?
April 14th.
April 14th. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the Hamilton Street Special Improvement District budget? I see no discussion. Madam Clerk.
Councilman Ambarson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Very good. So now we're on to second readings of ordinances, and we have none. Yay. Ordinances on introduction on first reading. Ordinance 4318-20, an ordinance amending the municipal code of the Township of Franklin, Somerset County, New Jersey, more particularly the addition of code chapter 277, quarantine and isolation standards. The foregoing ordinance is presented to Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, and publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, at 7 p.m. at the municipal complex. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Council President, a brief.
So once it's seconded, yes, you can.
It was. Ted.
So yes, discussion. I would like the attorney to explain.
Just a
what this
brief
means.
explanation. This is an ordinance that was actually given to us by the county, I guess.
County Health Officer.
County Health Officer. And she believed that acting as the Board of Health, that the council had to adopt this ordinance, and it really is it's the process by which you would quarantine or isolate people who have a communicable disease as defined by the State Department of Health. I questioned our need to do it because I believe that both the governor's executive order and this power already exists in the county health department. But this is one of those things that I talked about before because things are moving so quickly. My recommendation is to introduce this. I am not certain that, once again, we need to do this. And as I told Mr. Vornlacher, I don't know of any other municipality that has this ordinance.
So I feel the same. I feel very strongly what the township attorney is saying.
However, that having been said, if we didn't introduce it now and the county said, no, you really have it and we have an issue, it would be a month before we could adopt it. So I would rather introduce it and hold it at the next meeting than not introduce it today. So this comes under the category of in an abundance of caution.
Right.
So we're going to introduce it, and you're going to research it more?
Yeah, and we're going to schedule it, and we're going to interact with we're going to interact with the county health department, and then, it'll be on for a public hearing and adoption at the next meeting. If we decide to pull it, we'll pull it at the next meeting.
Right. I mean, and it's so the language comes straight from the model rules for boards of health from the state health administrative code. So it's not something that our health officer came up with on her own. It comes straight from a model rule from the state of New Jersey. So my assumption is that while my brief research has not yielded any success in finding another town with this ordinance, that it does exist somewhere.
Freehold has it?
Yes.
Freehold, there you go. So thank you, Anne Marie. I knew there was somebody out there that had one.
Well, surely the county is telling all Somerset County municipalities to
No,
adopt such an ordinance.
No, this is, because she is our health officer, this is specifically for towns that have the county as their Department of Health.
So there's 8 municipalities in the county that the county health officer serves as their health officer, 7 and us, 7 others and us. And the only thing I am aware of at this particular time is that the county health officer, when this was told to us on Friday, we were the first municipality to request an emergency management council meeting with the health officer to go over all of these. So those meetings may be coming in the future, Councilman, but I don't know at this point what has been said to others. I do know that I spoke with the county director of emergency management several times over the last 4 or 5 days, and he was encouraging me to do this ordinance as well, because it's his understanding that it needs to be done to take certain actions as it relates to this.
So let's be clear what this ordinance is. We are not at this moment attempting to quarantine any particular person. We are giving the health officer, who is a public health official, the power to set quarantine. This body will never decide whether someone is going to be quarantined, the manager.
Actually, Mayor, that's not necessarily true. This rule, you are the Board of Health.
Yes.
And it is a Board of Health that calls for the isolation and quarantine of individuals for various reasons, all of which are health related. But this is where the health officer would act as your designee, but it is the authority of the Board of Health, not the health officer, that this ordinance gives the power to quarantine and isolate.
But we are giving her that ability to do it.
But understand that it is the authority of the board.
Yeah, no, I understand that. One can delegate authority,
Right.
They can't delegate responsibility. It is always us who are doing it, but the actual decision process
Correct.
as to who is going to be quarantined will not be by Dr. Kramer or
Correct.
or Dr. Chase or Mr. Vasanella. It will be by her.
And this
Correct.
ordinance is not only for human beings. It's an all-encompassing quarantine and isolation. It could be for livestock as well. I mean, it is truly a health related rule for a Board of Health, and there could be a reason that you would quarantine animals who are contagious as well. I mean,
The government quarantines,
It's
just like they did in
exactly.
Italy.
Exactly.
It's the governmental responsibility.
All right,
Correct.
so just make it clear that animals are not involved in, what you were saying was
I
correct.
want, because people are going to read this, Mayor, and I want people to understand why it's there. It
And
is a
I-
model rule.
Mr. Vornlacher,
That's all.
I agree, that is what is in there, and I agree with you telling people, but let's make it clear, coronavirus, COVID-19 is not involving spread through animals by infection of animals. So I just don't want that to be confused. Okay, I think, any other discussion on this? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Resolution agenda, I'm sorry, consent agenda resolutions A through U as listed on the consent agenda portion of this meeting are presented to Township Council for adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Anyone want to pull an item?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to pull an item, but it's real quick for the township manager, and I believe that's number G of the resolution 2107. If he could just give a quick 30 seconds on that.
This is awarding a contract to a consultant to maintain the police department's accreditation files and standards so that they're kept up to date, and it's being done by an organization that was also awarded a contract to assist us in getting reaccreditation. Rather than spending the money on a police officer doing it, we're using a consulting firm to maintain all of the accreditation files. There's standards that have to be kept up to date, some daily, some weekly, some monthly, and all of those standards and will be kept up to date by this consulting firm.
Any other items? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
We have two resolutions to be voted on separately. Items A and B is listed on the resolutions to be voted on separately. Portion of this meeting are presented to Township Council for adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on these? So one of them is the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's denial of all permits, supporting that, the Nessie project that was discussed earlier. We are asking the Department of Environmental Protection to pull, to deny the permits. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Galtieri?
Yes.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Oni Chaka?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
We are on to item number 21, old business, 2020 boards, committees, commissions, vacancies. Are there any nominations? Hearing none, we will go on to adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Wash your hands.